Senior advisor to Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and a former Israeli ambassador to the UK. Ambassador, thank you very much for joining us. What can you tell us about the ground invasion? I mean, Israel's been telegraphing this. There are so many troops on the border. What are you able to tell us about when or if that's going to happen?
I apologize, Katie, but I can't go into operational matters for obvious reasons. I can, however, tell you what our goal is. And our goal is to cripple Hamas, to smash their military machine, and to create a new reality in Gaza where they will no longer threaten our people. They'll no longer have the capability to hurt our people, to inflict the sort of violence that they inflicted upon us on Saturday morning. And they will no longer have the will to do so. That's the goal.
How do you do that when so much of their infrastructure is underground, is below the entire strip of Gaza?
We're expecting any operation to be difficult. We expect it to be, unfortunately, not short. Anyone who's been in the army, anyone who's been in combat knows that war is a terrible thing, and it will take lives of many of our soldiers. My own daughter is serving in the south. And of course, as a parent, I'm worried about her, as there are tens of thousands of parents across Israel who are worried about loved ones. And people in Gaza, I'm sure, are similarly scared. But we have to do this. We have to do this because Hamas has declared war on Israel. And if we go for some sort of Band-Aid solution, some sort of aspirin solution, a quick fix, we're going to be back to square one, and we'll have another Hamas attack like we saw on Saturday in a month or 2 months or 6 months. It's important that we don't return to the reality that we had before Saturday morning. We want to come out of it.
I know you're planning on trying to root out Hamas, kill every last member, as the Prime Minister has said. Are you also currently planning on what will happen after that if you're successful? What will be left of Gaza, number one, and number two, who will be in charge of Gaza?
So the goal is to have a situation where there's no longer a terrorist organization in Gaza that can threaten us the way that Hamas has. That's the goal. And can I say something here? This is not just Israel's battle. It's true that Hamas is a mortal enemy of Israel, but it must be remembered that Hamas is also a mortal enemy of everyone who wants to see peace and reconciliation here in the Middle East. When we've looked at what motivated Hamas to do this attack on Saturday morning with all the terrible and barbaric violence that they used. So obviously they wanted to kill Israelis. Obviously they wanted to take hostages, kidnap people and take them back to Gaza. But politically, it's clear they want to stifle attempts at Arab-Israeli peace. And the prospect of more peace in the Middle East, of an Israeli-Saudi breakthrough that President Biden is working on so intensively, and that we're an eager partner in this process. But that sort of peace breakthrough is an existential threat to people like Hamas, who don't believe in peace, who don't believe in reconciliation, who believe in violence and extremism and old-fashioned hatred. And so if we defeat Hamas now, and I believe we will, that not only is helping to protect and save the lives of our people, but that will also ultimately I believe, open space to energize Middle East peace. What
happens to the Palestinians? What does peace look like for them? Is it a Palestinian Authority that moves into the Gaza Strip? Is it an occupation? I know you guys pulled out many years ago, but is it a reoccupation by the Israelis of Gaza? Can you rule that out?
I can't answer that question totally, but I can say the following. There were people who said that because Hamas has been ruling the Gaza Strip now for 16 years, that they'd become more responsible, that the responsibilities of government would force them to become more pragmatic, more moderate. And of course, we saw on Saturday morning that any such hopes were just irrational, unfortunately. We saw, as the Secretary of State Blinken said, as my Prime Minister said, we saw ISIS-type terrible, horrific violence. And it's clear that Hamas does not represent the interests of the people of Gaza. They don't care about the people of Gaza. For them, they're extremist, theological, ideological agenda is more important than the real needs of the people of Gaza. The Palestinians deserve better.
I ask this because in the hindsight of what happened after 9/11 and what the Americans went and did across the Middle East, trying to root out al-Qaeda, they created the vacuum that allowed ISIS to rise and then flourish for a time. And to use a tired phrase, if you're going to take the wheels off a car or the landing gear off a plane mid-flight, you better reattach the landing gear before you plan on landing. So I'm curious, are there discussions about what will happen to Gaza after that? And then also, are there discussions about whether a Palestinian state is a solution that you might go back to? And if so, what do you do about the settlements in the West Bank?
So you've asked a whole lot of questions,
yeah.
And I'll try to get to them, each one, time permitting. But I think it's important to remember the following. Israel pulled out of the Gaza Strip in 2005 under Prime Minister Sharon. We took down all the settlements and we pulled back to the 1967 line. And according to theories that people have espoused over the years, we should have peace, correct? We took down the settlements and we pulled back to the 67 line. And on the contrary, we didn't get it. We want peace with all our Arab neighbors, and we want peace with the Palestinians too. But I have to tell you, as an Israeli, it is very frustrating that the so-called moderate Palestinians on the West Bank refuse to condemn the Hamas atrocity. And that is a problem, because a genuine peace partner would have no problem standing up and saying, Hamas is not us, this is unacceptable, these people don't represent us. But no, the Prime Minister of the Palestinian Authority, I heard him just yesterday, blaming Israel for these attacks. And I think it's important that Palestinian moderates stand up and take on their own extremists.
In order to blunt some of that criticism, what are the negotiations to... Are you putting pressure on Egypt to create a humanitarian corridor? I know Egypt has said they don't want refugees. But to blunt the criticism, what are you going to do about the civilians who do have nowhere to go?
Well, first of all, your reporter from Gaza showed that we are making an effort to try to make sure that the civilian population can move out of areas of conflict. And we've done that through leaflets. We're doing that in other ways as well. And the people of Gaza know their neighborhoods better than anyone else. And they know where there are Hamas positions. They know where there are tunnels. They know where there are command posts. And we've urged them to move away. We're not targeting the civilian population of Gaza. We're targeting Hamas. And that has to be clear. And that distinguishes us from the terrorists who just indiscriminately and deliberately target innocent civilians. But can I just explain one sentence why we need to forcibly strike back? Because not only do we have to eliminate Hamas, we have to crush it. As a military organization, we have to change the reality in Gaza. But there are other bad actors who are watching, and your previous reporters alluded to that. There is Hezbollah in Lebanon. There is Iran just over the horizon. If Israel is perceived as weak, if Israel is perceived as receiving blows, deadly blows, vicious blows, barbaric blows, and not responding, that's just an invitation for more such blows. Israel has to show that violence against its citizens, you kill our people, you will pay a price. That's crucial in deterring future such attacks.